The Answer.
Get the latest weather, traffic, and news updates online at 560theanswer.com.
This hourly segment is brought to you by Wealth Health Radio with Joe Murphy, Sundays, noon to 1. Learn more online at mwmfinancial.tax.
Now, from the Signature Bank Studios, this is Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan Proft on AM 560. The Answer.
Good morning, Chicago. John Anthony filling in for Dan Proft, Chicago's Morning Answer. I'm the host of Black and White Radio, heard every Saturday right here on these airways, AM 560 from 4 to 7 p.m. Also on 92.7 FM and AM 1400, The Answer in Detroit, Michigan. You know, this next interview is going to be a very touchy subject, and I know it's going to be touchy because we're going to delve into some. I don't think we're having this conversation enough because across America, I think we are witnessing one of the most complicated cultural and medical debates of our time unfold in real time. Questions about gender identity, youth mental health, and parental authority that once existed quietly inside therapy offices are now shaping school policy, state legislation, and even Supreme Court rulings. The legal landscape has shifted dramatically in the past year. In the United States versus Scametti, the Supreme Court ruled 6-3 that Tennessee's law restricting puberty blockers and cross-sex hormones for minors could stand. The court rejected the claim that such restrictions automatically discriminate based on sex and signaled that states may regulate these treatments for children. Another major legal dispute involved parental rights and whether schools can conceal a child's gender transition from parents. The court sided with parents, as they should have, who argued that schools should not be making those kinds of life-altering decisions without family involvement. Meanwhile, another case moved to the courts could determine whether states can restrict transgender participation in school sports. What does the research say? Research suggests roughly 1.8% of American adolescents identify as transgender. That's representing more than 700,000 young people between the ages of 13 and 17. Now, that rate is significantly higher than the percentage among adults. At the same time, mental health challenges among these young people are serious. Studies consistently show elevated levels of depression, anxiety, and suicidal ideation among gender-distressed youth. That reality makes the role of therapists and families critically important. Parents across the country are asking difficult questions. When a child expresses confusion about gender identity, what should responsible therapy actually look like? Well, they banned conversion therapy here in the state of Illinois. Should treatment focus on affirmation or exploration? How should families respond when schools or social media influence these conversations? And how do we ensure that children struggling emotionally receive thoughtful mental health care rather than ideological answers? One voice has stepped directly into this national conversation is Pamela Garfield-Jager. She's a California licensed social worker with decades of experience working with children and families navigating mental health challenges. Online, she is known as the Truthful Therapist. Follow her on X at that handle. She wrote a book about practical response to gender distress, which provides practical guidance for families navigating these issues. She's also released a children's book titled Froggy Girl, which she describes as a response to the growing number of gender-themed books aimed at young children. Pamela, welcome to Chicago's Morning Answer.
Hi there. Thank you for having me.
You know, can
I correct one thing?
Yeah.
Because I changed my Twitter handle because some people were making fun of it because it kind of said Truth the Rapist. So now it's just P. Garfield-Jager, which is my name. Just wanted to correct that. It was recent. You wouldn't have known.
Yeah, I was about to say, I just saw it because I wanted to have you on Black and White a couple of weeks ago, and I forgot to reach out to you. But I had such an amazing time interviewing you in Detroit, and then I started seeing everything that's happening across this country, and I had to have you on when I found out I was feeling it.
Thank you. So much is happening. Yeah, let's dive in.
But Pamela, before we get into the politics or the court rulings, I want to begin with what you see in your practice. when a young person comes into therapy expressing, I love that you've called it gender distress, not gender dysphoria. But what are the emotional or psychological struggles you most commonly see beneath the surface?
Yeah, so what gender distress or gender dysphoria, whatever word you want to use, it's really just a symptom of some other issue. So there are a wide variety of issues that it could be. But some of the themes are that usually it's a child with some kind of autistic spectrum traits. Yeah. So they get roped in because they don't feel comfortable in their bodies. They don't fit in with their peers. And they're told if they become trans that they have this whole new community. And it also answers the questions to all of the reasons why they feel like misfits. So that's one really big population. Another big population are people with some kind of trauma, especially sexual trauma, because they don't feel comfortable in their sexuality. They don't want to face, dating and things like that. So becoming trans is a good way to avoid those feelings and avoid the fear of growing up and the fear of becoming, a grown man or grown woman. And then a lot of my cases become more about just family issues, like family conflicts, family poor communication, divorce situations, things like that. So we're talking about issues that are longstanding or things that people have dealt with in the past, but now it's being covered up by this trans issue.
When many parents, they hear that phrase, gender affirming care, it sounds positive, but they may not understand what responsible therapy actually involves. In those early stages, when a young person begins questioning their identity, who they are, what should a careful and ethical therapeutic process look like?
Yeah, so first of all, that term gender affirming care is a euphemism. It's almost Orwellian because there's no care about telling someone that they're not who they are, to tell them to live a lie, and then to lead them into getting harmful hormones and painful surgery. So there's nothing care about that. But what would a therapist do? Generally, the way we used to work in our profession, and unfortunately that's changed, is we do an assessment. We never take things for face value. In fact, therapists used to do that to a fault. They used to analyze everything, right? We used to be made fun of for that. And now what they're doing when gender comes in the room is they don't look at any other underlying issues. They don't look at any of the dynamics. They don't look at any of the things I just explained to you earlier. They just go straight to the gender identity. It's like this weird blinders go on when gender goes in the room, and because they're trained to do that.
Yeah. The data suggests that this issue is particularly concentrated among young people. I mean, as you heard, I said there are more than 700,000 American teenagers who now identify, and I'm sure that number has grown since then. What do you think explains this generational shift? Do you believe social media and these online communities are shaping how teenagers interpret feelings about identity?
Oh, yes, for sure. And they're marketed too. This is intentional. So it's coming from social media. That's one of the biggest places. It's really coming from all angles. They're being indoctrinated in schools, and almost every public school, even in red areas, they're learning this gender identity. They're being forced to use pronouns. They're being praised. They're watching their peers getting praised for having a trans identity. So there's influences everywhere. And then, of course, there's all this social capital that's happening. Plus, children are being put on medications. They're being told the social emotional learning aspect of it, where they're told to avoid their feelings. Well, being trans is a great way to avoid growing up and avoid your feelings, because you're told you get this quick fix if you're trans.
And do you think that's one of the reasons you see this real push across the country to ban conversion therapy? Because all they want is their side as it relates to indoctrinating these young, impressionable minds. Because they told us, I don't know, I just remember when I was in the General Assembly of Illinois, and they were telling me that the frontal lobes of an individual doesn't fully develop until I think it's 24 or 26. But that, as it relates to crime, but as it relates to this community, why are they able to get away with, if these young people, they haven't fully developed their brains yet, and as it relates to when they commit crime, why are they able to make these decisions about something that can be life-altering for them?
Well, when it comes to this issue, you really can't think logically, and that's why a lot of people are so lost trying to understand. There's nothing logical about it. What I suggest for people who really want to understand is to look up queer theory and look up what's behind that, because really the goal is to turn everything that's normal upside down. And then also we're talking about more of that left ideology where there's a subjective truth. So if you identify as something, that becomes truth. And so that's why this has become so widespread. And we have activists that have taken over all of our institutions and all of our leadership roles to be able to push this in. Because there are plenty of people that have pushed back over the years, including actual trans people who have pushed back. Yeah. And they've been ousted. They've been canceled. And so now we have all the WPATH, which is the World Professional Association of Professional Health, the World Professional Association of Transgender Health. They have, what they've done is they've infiltrated all the institutions, the Endocrine Society, the AAP, the psychological societies, and then they say all the experts agree, because they have taken all over these institutions, and people believe experts, and then they're intimidated and they don't speak up, and they also see the examples as they're made of their colleagues.
Now, how important was that Supreme Court decision in the United States? I think it's versus Scametti. How important of a decision was that as it relates, and what has been the pushback from the transgender community?
Oh my gosh, that was so important. I was literally cheering. I was so happy. Yeah. The decision itself was very important because there are, I don't know how many bans, 27 bans across the country. Different states have put these bans forward to stop the puberty blockers, which are very harmful, but people are lied to and believe it's reversible, and stop hormones, and stop the medicalization of youth who, like you just said, don't have the wherewithal to be able to make these kinds of decisions. And so this case they had in Tennessee, they sued the state because of this one case. They thought they could win by claiming that it was discrimination. Yeah. Well, the funny thing was the lawyer, Chase Strangio, who's a woman, who looks very much like a woman, but tries to pretend she's a man. She could not argue that it was, transgender was a fixed identity, because of course we know there is something called gender fluid. So she lost the case. She lost the case for many reasons. So a lot of her arguments actually created a ripple, because she proved right then and there that their thought process does not make any sense and does not hold up in law.
And I think that's one of the reasons you wrote not just one book, but two books. The first book, A Practical Response to Gender Distress, and your children's books, Froggy Girl, because of this implosion that's happening between for young people between ages 13 and 18. And in some cases, it's even younger than that. That's what blows my mind. Talk to us about what made you write these books. And if there's a parent out there, because I know it's a touchy subject. I know friends who have transgendered children, and whenever I'm around them, I try my best to love on them, but also speak the truth. I think sometimes we fail to speak truth to people. How important is it for a parent who may be struggling with this right now with their child to get both your books?
Yeah, so I wrote this book because there are very few like it out there. In fact, there's none like it out there. Because, like I said, all the institutions are captured, and the people who agree with me are scared to do so. They've lost their livelihoods. I actually have a unique situation where I have this disability, so I could no longer work a full-time job. So I had less to lose. I felt called to this. So, and I have all this experience, as you said earlier. Yeah. And I wanted parents to know that, believe that there's something wrong, to have somewhere to understand what's really going on, because everything around them, every doctor, every nurse, every teacher that they encounter says that they're transphobic and that they're a bigot and that they need to affirm their child or their child will kill themselves. And they're scared. These parents are scared. They don't know what to do. They don't know where to turn. They know something's wrong, but it's very, very confusing to navigate this landscape. So my book very clearly spells out all of these lies, exactly why they're lies. I show the studies that are cited by the other side that are all wrong, that have been debunked, but they cite them anyway. And I also give a lot of very practical, that's what it's in the title, practical things to do, things to say, ways to fight back against pronouns and why pronouns are harmful, questions to ask your child, to empower parents, because I really want parents to know that they can do it, that they can handle it, because oftentimes when they're in that circumstance, when their child is identifying as trans, there usually is something wrong with, something struggling in the family. Yeah. This doesn't happen to families who are completely strong. This doesn't happen to the star athlete. This doesn't happen to the families that aren't dealing with a divorce or some kind of difficulty. So they usually need support. So my book is there to give that to them. And at the end, it has a whole list of resources, too. So there are other organizations that are fighting this. So they don't get a lot of attention because, of course, the mainstream media won't cover it. All of these institutions say that they're transphobic, and all you get are the main things, and they keep telling you to affirm.
Yeah.
So that's why I wrote that book. And then Froggy Girl. Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
Yeah, so I wrote Froggy Girl because I wrote that first book. I was all excited, new author. I was tracking it on Amazon, and I was watching it sit next to all these really disgusting, horrible adolescent children's books, that tell children that they're trapped in the wrong body, has very awful sexual content in it. It just disgusted me to see. It was weird to watch my book next to these other really icky books. So that inspired me to write this children's book called Froggy Girl, which it doesn't mention trans, it doesn't mention anything about gender. It's for little kids, and it's just about self-acceptance. It's about a little girl who wishes she was a frog and then learns that she can't be a frog because she's a little girl.
Mm. So it tackles the agenda without actually specifically saying it. I also want to, because I said on my Black and White radio show a couple of Saturdays ago, I don't think we're talking enough about what's happening in the transgender community as it relates to a lot of these mass shootings. I think about some of the medications that these individuals who are going through this ordeal have to take. Is there any correlation or is there any ties with some of the medications they're taking? And could that be leading to a lot of these mass shootings from the transgender community? Because I think the last 8 or 9, maybe even more, have come from this community. How do we address that?
Yes. Well, I don't believe there are any good enough studies to really prove it, but we know that hormones impact our psychological state. Yeah. Everybody's heard of roid rage, and we know estrogen creates lots of anxiety and depression and emotional instability. So we just know that. So, and we're taking already very unstable people. These shooters are people who are extremely disturbed. So we're taking a fire and we're pouring gasoline on top of it. And so I think that's why we're seeing more of that. Also, they are living this lie, and they are told that they're under some kind of genocide. They're told that everyone hates them if they're looked at the wrong way. And so they're just we've got these very unstable people, and you have put this ideology on top of them, and it is just a recipe for disaster.
Maybe that's your next book, to delve into the medical aspect of this and the medicines and the pharmaceutical companies and how maybe finding a study that's out there, and maybe that's your next book, Pamela.
Maybe, yeah.
Well,
there's so much to it. Yeah, there's so much to it.
Now, where can people find your book?
So Froggy Girl has its own website, which is FroggyGirlBook.com. It's also on Amazon, on all of the major online book platforms. A Practical Response to Gender Distress is on Amazon, so you can find it there. So you can just Google it. I have a website, thetruthfultherapist.org, and there's a link to each on my website.
She's Pamela Garfield-Jager, and your Twitter handle is now what now? I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's okay. It's my name, P. Garfield-Jager, and Jaeger spelled with a J. So,
all right. She's a California licensed social worker known as the Truthful Therapist. You still go by that title.
Yes, I am the Truthful Therapist.
Author of A Practical Response to Gender Distress, Tips and Tools for Family, and the children's book, Froggy Girl. Go out and get it on her Froggy Girl website and wherever books are sold. Pamela Garfield-Jager, thanks so much for joining me on Chicago's Morning Answer.
Thank you.
You're the best. Chicago's Morning Answer.
It's news, opinion, insight. This is Chicago's Morning Answer on AM 560. The Answer.
I'm attorney Stephen Leahy. If you're a business owner with unfiled tax returns, tax season is